You're listening to Never Heard of It, a Night Shift Radio production. We're going to talk about Pedro Pascal today, and Pedro Pascal is one of those actors that came out of nowhere for me. Not that I didn't really know who he was, but he was one of those actors that it was always like, oh yeah, that guy. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, right, that guy. Like he's in fucking everything right now.
I actually didn't know who he was until Wonder Woman 84. And I looked him up and then realized everyone was making references to him being the Mandalorian.
At times. Yeah.
Of course, you know that I have not yet seen.
Right.
But yeah, that was my first encounter with him that I know of. I may have seen him elsewhere. I honestly don't remember at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in a few things. Obviously, previous to this, he was Oberyn in Game of Thrones. He was in the sequel to Kingsman. He was in The Great Wall, but we're not going to hold that against him. But I mean, he's been in. So obviously, most notably, he was in Narcos. He was in The Mentalist, Graceland, Game of Thrones, Homeland, Nikita, CSI. Hey, there we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
All things that I have not seen. So really, there's good reason for me to have never encountered him prior.
He was in Law and Order SVU, Nurse Jackie. Yeah, he's been in tons of things. But again, he's one of those people that's like, oh, that guy. And then all of a sudden, I feel like oh crap, I'm gonna completely space on his name. Poe Dameron. What's his name?
Oh yeah.
I feel like he was another one of those guys that just kind of came out of nowhere as well. Yeah. That all of a sudden, and obviously it was because of Poe Dameron, but all of a sudden he was like the on-demand actor for a very long time, which again is really odd to me because I feel like Finn, who I've forgotten his name as well. I'm having a bad day with names apparently.
Yeah.
But I feel like he should have been the one that everyone was like, oh, that guy. Cause that was kind of what it was right from the get-go, is because he had already been known from a really, really great alien invasion movie called Attack the Block. Well, what's his name?
Yeah. So you were thinking of, Finn is John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac is Poe Dameron.
Isaac. Ugh, I forgot both their names. I forgot everyone's name. But yeah, John Boyega.
I had to look it up.
Right? I know. Well, that's the thing. I knew their names, and I know their names. I've seen them. I've talked about them. But John Boyega, that's another one. I expected him to be more like Oscar Isaac, in higher demand, because of Star Wars. But this again goes back to the whole thing that The Force Awakens definitely was written as Finn being the come from nothing and become a Jedi thing, and then somebody was like, no, it should be a white person instead, and then the whole movie just fucking went to shit. Not that I don't like Rey. I do. I don't mind the movies. They're not great, but they're still Star Wars movies, so I'll watch them. But Finn being the Jedi, coming from nothing, being a literal nobody, revolting against the Empire, and then just becoming a Jedi would have been the better story.
I actually really thought that it was The Force Awakens, right? That was the first of the new trilogy. I thought that The Force Awakens was steering us in a direction that Finn and Rey were both going to become Jedi and become kind of two sides of the story, and both have their strengths and their whatever their weaknesses might be, that they have to prop each other up to save the day. And that would have been a very compelling story to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they definitely ditched Finn. They definitely they didn't do well with Finn. Of course, there was a lot of backlash from a bunch of racist assholes who probably didn't even watch the movies anyways. So
yeah, and you know what? Fuck their opinions anyway.
Right, as we say with all racists. But we're not here to shit on racists. Just kidding. We are all the time. That's silly. Of course we are. But we are instead. Hello and welcome to the Never Heard of It podcast. I'm your host, Michael Fight.
And I am. Oh shit! I had something on this. No, don't. Never mind. I'm Caleb. Hi. How are you?
Hey, nice to meet you. So we are rounding up our month of badass women in film, and we actually chose a movie that looks like it was intending to be a very, very good movie. Now, whether it is, we'll discuss that over the next hour.
Where are we going with this?
Right, but this is one of those, we're like Minty the Assassin, Cemetery High, like those are all movies that like somebody went out and made those movies and nobody was like, yeah, this is going to be like a serious, really good. Yeah, people are going to watch this movie and be like, oh yeah, that was a really good movie. They're going to watch and be like, that was fucking stupid and hilarious or something. That's what they were going for. But Prospect, what was in fact set out to be a serious film, a film meant to be taken serious.
I will go so far as to say that I considered the first 10 minutes of this film, and I'm using that benchmark only in that, like, that's the first time that I had to pause to do something not movie related. The first 10 minutes of this film were better than all of the other movies we watched this month combined.
Yeah, I'll back that. Yeah, I think that's a very bold but correct and accurate statement. Yeah. But yeah, so we're talking about the movie Prospect, which can be found on Netflix. And this movie actually came out about 2 years ago, well, 2.5 years ago now, in 2000. Yep, 2018. And this movie, like I said, is available on Netflix. So this movie stars Sophie Thatcher, Jay Duplass, and Pedro Pascal. Sophie Thatcher is, we'll say, the main character of this movie. I mean, she is, even though she doesn't really have as many lines as, say, Pedro Pascal. But she's only been in a few things. She was in a couple episodes of Chicago Med, and she just played young Reagan in The Exorcist, the remake of The Exorcist in 2016. But I'm gonna venture to say that she is. I can't exactly say with certainty, but I'm gonna venture to say she is very young. I'm definitely gonna say under 20.
Yeah, no bio of like how old. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it strikes me as probably like early to mid-teens. But seems to me like her performance in this film, if it doesn't lend itself to her having a much like brighter career, and then that's wrong. That's a disservice to all of us, I think. Unless she doesn't want that. If she made this movie, she's like, yeah, you know what? Fuck it, I'm done. Then
I don't want to do any more movies. Yeah.
But if her dream is to be an actor, and she isn't propelled into a fantastic career after this, then there's no justice.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would say, the thing about her performance in this movie is, so we had gone with the theme of like badass women in film, and then mostly picked bad movies. And the thing about this is that she's not badass in the sense that you would typically think. Like, she isn't like, all of a sudden I'm the most amazing with a gun and I can fight, a full grown adult, or, all these sort of things. She's a badass in the sense that like she knows exactly what she needs to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she does. And it's not about physical strength or agility or tech prowess, because, throughout the film, like, it's very obvious she has very average knowledge about, what they're doing. And we'll get into that. But it's just that survival instinct and that draw to be like, okay, this thing has happened. This is messed up. This is what I want. How do I get back to that point? And I think that's that sort of like savviness you would see in someone who is has a strong character.
Yeah. Well, it's made reasonably clear that she's pretty young, and she's kind of like thrust into this life of being like a freelance miner of some sort, and a miner as in like mining, but also miner as in she's a young child. See how that works?
Oh, that's how that.
She's a freelance
that's curious.
miner.
Yeah. Homonyms. They're weird.
And she accepts it. She doesn't really like fight against it or like sulk or anything like that. And she picks up knowledge along the way. She kind of figures out how to do things. And uh there's a few scenes early on where she's with her father, Damon, played by J. Duplass, who kind of treats her like shit, but in a way that feels like it's intended to like, I can't do this for you. You have to know how to do this because like we have to be able to survive in doing what we do. And
Yeah.
so like if I do all of this for you, then I'm not helping you at all. So there's a little bit of tough love. And like, you would see in a lot of situations like this, a teenage character might like throw a fit or push back or like, I hate my parents, blah blah blah. But she's just like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I think that lends itself really well to her character growth.
Yeah, so in the very beginning of the film, we'll kick it right off. So, in the very beginning of the film, we see C, who is
Aha,
Sophie Thatcher, C,
see.
and Damon, her father, and they're in their ship, and it looks like they're about to take off. We're getting the sense that it's just them. She, asks questions about like why can't we go home, and he's like, you don't even have home, which already establishes the idea that they're very nomadic, in that we get the idea right off the bat that um that their work that they do to survive is very like we go wherever the next job is,
Hmm.
and less of like, oh well, this is just I don't travel for work. It's like we work as a result, we have to travel. So they're basically diamond miners,
Yeah.
in a sense. They're prospectors, let's say, hence the name.
And at one point, he even says something like, these jobs, this grunt work, whatever, it's not going to last forever, and you get the sense of like, oh, there's not a lot of backstory, there's not a lot of exposition, which is kind of cool. Like we're just kind of thrust right into these characters' lives and just have to piece it together on our own. But we learn that there's some sort of debt hanging over them. They've got the lease of the like drop pod that they're in that they use for like landing on the moon to do their prospecting. They have a loan. It's just the two of them, so like something has happened to the mother. We don't know exactly what, and the father's doing all of these like odd jobs to try to get to them to the point where they can live comfortably somewhere and find a home. We learn that like she remembers growing up on one particular planet, but her dad's like, that's not home. You barely even like ever lived there, and we can't go back there. We're gonna
Right.
find someplace that we can settle for real.
And he even says like that's not even the planet you were born on. And she was like, wait,
Hmm.
what? And he was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're actually born on this other planet, and then we moved to this planet, and now we're here. Yeah, it's crazy. So we get that world right off the bat, and we have a couple of moments of her asking questions like, well, why can't we just go stay with mom? Why, or whatever, why can't we just do this? And he's like, well, listen, like this one thing, in a little bit we get to the point where they get their first haul, and she was like, why can't we leave just right now? And he's like, look, this basically resets us to zero.
Hmm.
At zero, like we're still nothing. Like we'd still have to go off and basically do this again. He's like, but if we go get this really big stash. So we learned that the reason why they're here is that a bunch of mercenaries have basically stumbled across a reservoir of these specific gems, and that the idea is that they basically hired him to go and dig these up and get these mines for them, and then
Hmm.
they'll split the money, and that's how they'll make their money. So this is kind of like part of the deal. They're like, look, you come mine this because it's a very dangerous mine. The gems are part of like, they're basically created by like alien clams, but
Yeah,
the
like
clams are covered in acid.
the gooey duck clams or whatever they're called.
Yeah. So, but they're pretty much covered in acid. So if you don't process it correctly, the acid will just burn you, or it'll just burn the gem out, and then you got nothing. So like
Hmm.
it's a very very like specific process in order to get it right, or you get melted, and we see this happen several times, in fact. So
Hmm.
pretty wild. So the
Which
film starts off. Yeah.
it always leaves me wondering in situations like this, how did they even discover this gem to begin with, and what is its actual value? Because if it takes that much like digging and like special extraction to remove it, and like even just to get one, how did they ever find out about it?
Yeah, well, so like the very first gem that they get is I don't know. I mean, it's handheld, maybe the size of like a tennis ball at best, and
Hmm.
it's 10,000. Like it's only 10,000 units or whatever their money is. And I mean, this thing's honking. Like a diamond that size would basically set you up to have your family wealthy for the rest of your life. Like,
Hmm.
so like these gems, like obviously aren't you know they're not exactly. Plus, did we ever learn what exactly the gems are aside from just rare gems? Like, are they just like jewelry items, or are they like used for something? I don't remember them
No,
saying it.
they call it Arlac, so it's like Aurelac or something like that.
Hmm.
But they don't refer to what it does, whether it's literally just a precious gemstone, whether it's
Hmm.
fuel, whether it like has some sort of like medicinal or like industrial purpose.
Yeah,
And
like a
that's the
gold where it's
yeah.
plated on buildings or whatever. Like it. Yeah.
And that kind of comes to the point of like we don't get the backstory or the exposition in this movie, and as frustrating as it is to not know anything about like this material and like how they found it or what it's used for, anything like that, it also like is a really interesting storytelling technique to just not tell us and like just assume, you know what, this is important, move on.
Yeah, so one of the things that this film does that I feel like a lot of films fail at is it gives us information about items that are only relevant to the right now and
Hmm.
don't cause you to ask a lot of questions that are relevant to the plot. So, like, me wanting to know how humans got to the point where they're jumping around ships, like what year is it, like why
Hmm.
are they, what planet are they on, what solar system are they in, like those are sometimes questions. Like they did such a good job of crafting this specific instance so well that I wasn't like, well, wait,
Yeah.
how are you even doing interplanetary travel in the first place? Like, because a lot of times people will bring that up to the point of like, oh well, we've got to jump from this star base to another star base, and they're just like,
Mhm.
hey, and they treat it very like very earthly in a way, like a hey, we're going from this port to this next port to do this thing. So like it feels like you're not left being like, I wait, hang on, how are you here, what do you do? It's very just like, yeah, you're just going to this next thing to do a thing. It was really crafted very well.
They almost treat it like a transit line, and they
Yeah.
refer a couple times to basically like what sounds to me like the slingshot technique of like using planetary gravity
Hmm.
to propel yourself to the next location. So we can assume that's some degree of how they're doing interplanetary travel. But like humans have been coming to this one kind of foresty moon somewhere
Endor.
and doing this yeah, it's Endor, doing this mining, but the company that runs this interstellar transit line has decided to like stop transit to here. So like this cycle that they're on is the last one. They've got only so much time to go down to the planet, do their thing, get back, catch the ride home. Otherwise they're stuck, they're fucked. So we get immediately that like sense of urgency and our initial conflict, the kind of like versus time. Um, and it's actually a great place to talk about. Like, obviously, it gets more nuanced. You can get really deep into like types of sci-fi and sci-fi storylines, but I kind of break them down into like three fairly big categories. You've got your bright, shiny future where like everything is great and like the technology is it's super advanced. Your Star Trek and whatnot. You have your like total apocalypse. Everything is shit. The world is over, and people are just eking out a living and just getting by, and like some sort of major disaster or conflict or whatever. And then you have stories like this that are kind of this like gritty, semi-realistic. Like obviously, like this isn't happening, but uh, the tech is run down and dingy, and like they're not talking about interstellar travel with like hyperspace drives and everything. And like there's very real like man versus man conflict. We don't discover like a nest of aliens that they have to fight. It's it's not it's not a James Cameron movie or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
it's just a very like straightforward, like this story theoretically could take place on Earth, and you could create the same type of drama out of it.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that is always like the tipping point for a lot of these films is they'll do that one thing that's very
Mhm.
very sci-fi. But this one actually didn't, and it was the guns. Actually, was the
Yes.
one that I thought was very interesting. Is that the gun basically is just like an air powered rifle that shoots, I would assume something to the effect of a sharp needle or bullet, because its
Yeah.
only purpose is just to pierce your spacesuit. Because obviously, if you're in an environment that is harsh to you, whether it's lacking air or in this case like poisonous environment,
Hmm.
us puncturing your spacesuit means you're dead. And I thought that was a really interesting choice, because they could have easily gone with some form of laser blast or something futuristic like that, but it was very very practical. And I
Yeah.
thought that was great. And of course, speaking of practical, almost all of the effects in this movie are practical, give or take just the beginning ones.
Yeah. You really didn't get a sense of any like CGI or anything like that that would like takes you out of that, to say it again, that kind of gritty realism.
Hmm.
And I like a story like that every now and then. I mean, I love my bright shiny sci-fi with
Oh,
crazy
sure.
explosions and laser blasts and whatnot, but a story like this feels more grounded. Over on Second Edition One, we talk about that a lot with the way that Battlestar Galactica feels like more like a timeless military drama and less like a sci-fi epic adventure, because they try to keep the technology rooted in something that we know and understand and that feels more current, and less like, well, they had to like create this technology in order to make like this effect make sense.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. So we see Damon and C, and they're getting out and they're starting their haul, and just as they've gotten their first batch, and they're heading to the next site, which is the big site, which is rumored to be called the Queen's Lair. So,
Hmm.
this is very reminiscent of like the gold rush, and more specifically, what was the big one in Aztec, like the Aztec gold? Who was the I mean, the one that everyone always talks about, like, oh, we're gonna
The
go off and
motherlode,
find the huh
the motherlode,
well, the mother lode, but no, there's like a specific place, like
El Dorado.
El Dorado. Yes, that's
There
exactly
you go.
that's exactly what this is.
Yeah,
This
the
is
fabled city of gold,
Yeah.
which, as an aside, since it's so fresh in my mind, having watched through the MCU again, I love when Ulysses Claw explains that, like, people looked for El Dorado for centuries, and they thought it was in South America when it was in Africa all the time, referring to Wakanda.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great line. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking about. So El Dorado, and that's kind of what this feels like. This is this rumored batch, basically this rumored area on this moon that everybody had searched for a really long time. And so these mercenaries, after we learned that their goal was to basically dump a prisoner there, to basically, live out a sentence in a cube and die, they stumbled across this and basically was like, oh shit, we found this mother lode, like this
Hmm.
Queen's Lair, they call it. And but we need someone to actually like mine it for us. Now, what's great is that this is the plot of a lot of different movies, but like, you don't like, I didn't instantly be like, oh, this is just the plot of blah, this is the plot of this, like, this is the plot of Congo, this is the plot of El Dorado, this is the plot of whatever. Like, there's so many movies, this is the plot of the Dora the Explorer movie. And it's true. um there's by the way, if you have kids who watch Dora the Explorer, do in fact watch the movie. It is actually really funny, and they do so many things to like make fun of the show. There's like these really funny like making fun of the shows. It was actually funny. In one of the scenes, she like turns to the camera as before like the movie kicks on. She's like, "Can you say blah?" And her parents are like, "Why does she keep doing that? Who is she talking to? Should we have her looked at for this?" Like, it was very very funny. They're like, maybe it's just a phase. Very funny.
That's
um
great.
yeah, it was pretty good. But yeah, so like, but I didn't instantly be like, ugh, this is just the plot of blah. I like, it took me a lot of reflecting on this movie to be like, oh shit, this is the same plot as this, but like they did it so well. And
Hmm.
something to note, so this movie, is actually based off a short that the directors, who are Christopher Caldwell and Zeke Earl, they actually made this as a short film and released it, and it got picked up at a festival, and they got their funding. And this movie was made for just shy of $4 million, which is pretty impressive, given the look of this film. And one of the cool things that they mentioned is that they actually hired a whole bunch of like cosplayers and stuff to actually do all of the costumes and the work and the settings and stuff like that. Really, really cool.
Neat. So it's funny that you say that, because we've talked several times, in fact several times even just this month, about how sometimes a movie feels significantly longer than its runtime because of like how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
This movie played almost out like a short film. Like it's like an hour and 40 minutes, hour and 39 minutes, whatever. But it didn't drag at all. It was a slow paced, but it moved at just the right speed. So like it never stopped. It never was like, where the fuck is this going? And it's pretty brilliant to be able to take a 14-minute short film and make it into a full feature and have it still retain that kind of energy.
Yeah, also very rare. I feel like, without completely altering the film itself. So this, I think this was a really great undertaking, and I kudos to Chris Caldwell and Z Carl. I really hope that they make some more movies. This looks to be the last thing they released, if I saw correctly. But I would assume they probably have, considering this movie came out, they had 2019 to kind of like run the gamut of promoting it and then using that as a vehicle to try to get money to make another movie. And then 2020 hit and nobody made movies anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm sure, especially lower budget films like this, so I'm sure that they probably ran into issues in that sense. But I do really hope that they get to make something else, because this was a good movie. This was a really good watch.
Looks like they've maybe made a couple other shorts before
Yeah.
and after this. So maybe we'll get a chance to kind of repeat that success and get those made into movies as well. If they're anywhere near as good as this one, then I would welcome that.
Yeah. So we mentioned that C and Damon are heading off to the next step, and as they do, Damon ends up being a little ahead of C, and he runs into two people who we learn are Ezra and Number Two. And Ezra is Pedro Pascal, and so he even, Damon being, we've kind of see him as not being a great father. Like he's not very attentive. It looks like he kind of like gets high as fuck and then just kind of passes out on her and makes her do like all the little shit work in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
But at this moment, he kind of puts his dad hat on and he was like, hey, stay back, turn your mic off, and then but be ready with the gun, the rifle that they have. And he was like, when I say so, like you follow behind us, and when I say so, you pull the rifle on the big one. And he's like, and I'll take care of the other guy. Number Two is basically just a big hulk of a guy, and he never really speaks.
Yeah.
So we hear Zeke we hear Ezra and Damon kind of talking, and Ezra, we get the impression right off the bat, and we learn that they're basically just trying to loot him. They're gonna steal his ship, get out of here. We learn that they're basically have been marooned on this island one way or another, and they're just gonna rob this guy, steal his ship, and then bounce out. And of course, Damon being like, hey, but listen, we're here to basically find El Dorado. Like you should come with us, the Queen's Lair. Like, how about you come with us and you get a share of this, and we each make our chunk of change, and then you help us get off this place, and then we bounce. And Ezra, of course, yeah.
I always wonder in scenes like that, like in the back of my head, I guess the cynic in me, there's the expectation that they would just be like, why don't we just still take your shit and leave you here or kill you? Like,
Right.
like I always wonder like how these characters expect to strike a deal and have it like upheld. Like as soon as your value is through, like they'll leave you.
Yeah, I mean, this is no different than the story at the end with the Mercs. But I will say that I feel like on the on the character, the person who has to make the deal, like Damon, like C, like Ezra later, I feel
Hmm.
like it's more of like a survival instinct of like, well, what if I attempt to trade you something and it's my value? And, he even says like, well, our value is being able to harvest these things for you.
Hmm.
Like it's actually worth, it's worth more than that. Like we need a ride back because their ship, gets damaged.
Yeah.
And, and that's that same sort of like survival instinct of like, do everything I can to try to get what I need because, and in this case, in both cases, they're severely outnumbered.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Yeah. So Damon is like, listen, like, this is what we're going to do. Okay. Let's, follow me. Like here, let's go with me. We'll go get this thing. You guys can help me do it. And then we'll all bounce out and you guys can take your share. So they start to head off and about halfway, we get to the point where C jumps out with her rifle. Ezra pulls up his, but number two has this big rail gun, and I messed up.
Love a railgun.
Love a rail gun, and Ezra has a little pistol, or doesn't have a gun. I think that's why they kind of get the drop on him because it's 2-1 at this point,
Uh,
two guns to one.
Yeah, I think in the confusion, Damon actually snags the pistol from Ezra,
Ah, gotcha.
and
Yeah,
then he
so
pulls that, kind of like turns and like grabs it from him, and like nobody move, sort of thing.
yep, and then so they're C is from afar, gun trained on number two. Damon is up close, gun trained on Ezra, and he's like, look, like, how about we just chill and do this? And just as that's about to happen, a little gunfight goes off, and we see that number two and Damon shoot themselves, basically shoot each other,
Hmm.
and they fall. And then C ends up shooting Ezra in the arm. Um, and so this is where we get our moment. As we get up, we see, Ezra gets up, C runs away, and after running out of bullets, and Ezra sees that Damon is sort of alive, and he finishes him off. So now at this point, C is running back to the to her ship. At this point, she can't leave. The ship is not able to leave. She doesn't have the gem, or maybe she has the gem.
And
Um,
she abandons everything and just takes off. She's like, you know what, fuck this, like not worth dying over.
yeah,
Dad's dead. Fuck this one guy that's here. I'm gonna get in the pod and I'm gonna catch the catch the last train home and figure my shit out after.
right.
Except the ship is broken from when it crashed.
Yeah, and she has no means of fixing it. So at this point, C is she's in the ship, and she's just kind of like, well, I guess I'll just chill for a little bit. She listens to some Latvian punk rock, eats
Makes a
some junk
big old
food,
mess.
makes a big old mess, and we hear some footsteps outside.
She's got the
Uh,
dopest headphones, by the way.
she does. Those are really
Just
fucking
how fucking
retro
dope
cool.
those are.
She definitely bought those at Urban Outfitters. That's like 100% for like $180. So before we get to who is in those footsteps, we're gonna go to a quick break. But I do want to mention a few things. So one, Night Shift Radio as a company has actually launched a Patreon just recently, or is
Oh, really?
about to. Yeah, it's true. Starting tomorrow. So the Patreon is a really great way to not only support all of the Night Shift Radio shows, which is 8 podcasts, by the way, and 2 upcoming shows,
Madness.
non-podcast related productions. But it's a really great way. You'll get episodes early for most of our shows. You'll get some bonus content, exclusive content. You'll get behind the scenes looks at our 2 upcoming productions, which is pretty exciting, both of which are really, really exciting. So you want to check those out. It's just a really great way to, like I said, support all of the shows, but also, get some cool extra content. Our value is the
Yeah.
content for you. So you can head over to patreon.com/nightshiftradio. There is a link down below. Check it out and, toss us a couple of bucks and, we'll make it worth your while. So one of the big ones is exclusive, getting episodes of Never Heard of It a few days early, which is exciting, and an upcoming series of where Caleb and I try to convince each other to watch a movie,
Yeah.
which is going to be pretty exciting.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
We also have another big thing coming up the week that this episode launches.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
yeah. So if you're listening to this on day one, this is Sunday, and in 2 days, on February 2nd, we're having our first Night Shift Radio crossover event.
Hey.
Where Michael and I from Never Heard of It join with the crew of Second Edition One. Spoiler, it's also me. To review the Battlestar Galactica film Razor, and that's a 2-part episode. So you got to make sure that you check both feeds in order to get the whole thing. We actually we we decided to do a little bit have a little fun with the format.
Yeah.
So you'll have to head on over to the Second Edition One feed to check out part one, and then come meet us back over here at Never Heard of It for part two.
Yeah, very, very fun. I'm very excited for this little crossover, and maybe we'll do more of these in the future. He says, knowing full well there's already one planned.
Wink.
But maybe with other shows. Yeah, so that's super exciting. And of course, thank you for subscribing on your podcast player of choice, or following,
Yeah.
or notifications on, or whatever it is that your podcast uses. Because I know like Amazon Music gets follow. I think Spotify is also follow. But subscribing is super helpful. You'll get notified right away when new episodes launch. Never Heard of It launches 2 episodes every week. And on top of it, all of our other shows, we're pretty much all weekly, minus 1 or 2 shows. But definitely check it out. And again, thanks a lot for subscribing. And of course, you can follow us on social media at The Nahoit Podcast on both Twitter and Instagram. Caleb, what's a website they can head to for both the Nahoit and Night Shift Radio?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Well, to visit us directly in our little corner of the web, you can always go to thenahoit.com. That's THENHOIT.com. Of course, we have our upcoming schedule of episodes with links to trailers, and where, if possible, you can find these movies streaming. Strailing. You can find them strailing. And then, of course, as we've alluded to, next month is going to be another month of all listener request movies, and we've got a contact form on our website where you can shoot us over those requests if you want to let us know what you want to hear us talk about. But if you want to learn more about, say, Night Shift Radio Media Group as a whole, you can visit the brand new and improved nightshiftradio.com. Check it out and peruse through all of the shows and wonderful blog content and the Storyteller series print edition, all of that great stuff on that site.
Cool. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we will finish up with the story of Prospect. Hello and welcome back.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
Cool.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Same.
I had something that I wanted to say, and then we went to break, and I forgot.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. Sometimes those breaks they're really long, and we just have to stand here in silence for the entire time. And
It's weird.
Just
That's totally how production works, everyone. It doesn't. Yeah, so when we left you, upon learning that her father has died, which, by the way, this is the one thing that kind of bothered me, but I think this is I think it's more of a character trait than less of an acting trait, is that the character of C is very not bothered by a lot. Like, she witnesses her father die, and she does get a little upset about it. I mean, we do see a little bit, but it's only like in the moment. But then also later she has to cut off an entire arm, and she's just very like, meh, this is the thing that I do. It was very like, it made me wonder if it was character or if it was written or acting.
Yeah, I think that we're supposed to accept that this kid has seen a lot of shit in her time. During that operation, she says, when I was 12, they used to have me basically go up inside this weird animal and like harvest the eggs because I was the only one small enough to do it without breaking them. And it took me an hour to wash the blood out of my hair every night, so this was nothing. And like I said, my assumption is that she's probably somewhere in her like mid-teens, and she's grown up, just her and her dad doing these like shitty like grunt jobs, mining and collecting and harvesting and doing all this like dirty work, and she's kind of become desensitized to it, to the point where like you would expect a stronger reaction out of someone her age. And when she doesn't react, you're just like, "Are you okay?
Should I
Do
call
you want to
someone?
talk?
Like, do you need help?
Do you need a
Yeah.
minute?"
Yeah. So, so as we mentioned, we hear some footsteps. C gets ready with the gun, and in walks Ezra. Who says like, "Hey, I've, like, look, we need each other. Like, you've got parts of the ship, I've got, whatever, and I need you to basically, we need to get off this island, or off this mountain or mountain island
It's a moon.
mountain planet.
It's
That's no
a moon.
moon."
No, it
Um,
isn't. It is a moon.
Oh, it is a moon. It is in fact a moon. Yeah. So he's like, we need to get off Endor, and she was like, fine, but or she even like says to him like, you're gonna do this for me, or
Mhm.
I'm gonna kill you, pretty much,
Yeah,
and he's
'cause she
like, well,
assumes that he has a ship. She's like,
yeah,
since you killed my dad, you're going to take me to your ship, and we're going to leave. Otherwise, I'm going to kill you." And he's like, "That sounds great, except for the part about me having a ship."
yeah. He's like, otherwise I would have left a long time ago. One of the things that was brought up in about the short and stuff like that, and Ezra's character is Ezra speaks in a very Shakespearean way. Like, everything is very like poetic almost, and I like it up until there's moments where he breaks, but
Pedro Pascal gives the most David Morrissey performance that I've ever seen anyone do, possibly even out David Morrissey's David Morrissey in this film. And I
spectacular.
fucking love it.
It is, yeah. I mean, he definitely speaks very flourishing. And his speech is very, uh, it's structured in a way that just it speaks volumes onto like his type of character, and I think it really works because you get the impression that he definitely is one of those, like, I don't want to say merc with a heart type things, because he's not. Like,
No.
he's one of those, like, I'm really really smart, but I will do everything I can to preserve me. Like,
Mhm.
if it means saving you because that saves me, then I will do that. But keep in mind, I will drop you in a second. Or, that's the impression that we get, at least.
Uh, Making a further connection to Walking Dead, it would basically be like if you gave David Morrissey Eugene's lines.
All right. Yeah.
Very like techno babble, and like uh very like fluid and like flowery, and like way more descriptors than is necessary, but delivered with so much gravity and like seriousness. I guess gravitas would have been a good word there.
Oh yeah.
That like
Gravitas.
you can't help but take it seriously.
Yeah. So they decide that, yes, this is what we're going to do. Fine, we'll do this. She explains, even in further detail about the Merc situation of what she knows. And so they're off, and they head off to basically find this thing. In the meantime, they run into a group of, I would say, religious zealots is a good example of.
Basically, yeah. I mean, we don't get a lot of context into them. We're told that they're religious settlers, and so they've chosen to live on this toxic moon.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, like this is just something where like the the plot demands that you accept that it's important and move on.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that's great is, there's they wouldn't have to necessarily interact with them, but the problem is that the gunshot wound that she has given to Ezra, as a result, has been infected by the
Mhm.
pollen floating in the air in this moon, and this is one of the things we see when you just, throughout the whole movie, every outdoor scene, there's just this dust and pollen floating through the air,
So
and
well done.
it's a practical effect. So what they did was, the film crew went and just basically grabbed a whole bunch of basement dust and just tossed it up in a soundstage and just filmed it for hours, and then
Oh,
just basically superimposed it over top of the actual film to make it look like this pollen, was just everywhere. And we do see a few moments of the pollen kind of being uh farted out of these ground buttholes,
yeah.
which was the only thing that I was like, ugh. really? You have buttholes in your ground. Like they look like buttholes. This is what we're seeing right now.
it's just a sphincter, okay?
It's
Sphincters
a
are everywhere.
it's a butthole. Um, you're touching that kitty on the butthole. And so the infection has basically got it to the point where it was like, look, if we don't like, hey, I don't want to be talking to these people either, but if we don't,
Mhm.
like this infection is going to kill me, maybe we can trade them for medicine or something like that. Like I need to talk to them. So he gets there, we get inside their little hut. The son does this very weird little musical performance. You know what it kind of looked like? It looked like he had the same device from the He-Man movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of what it looked like he was playing on, the key.
He plays it like a crank organ, but it sounds like an accordion,
Yeah.
and then it's got, like, nubbins all over it that presumably are the keys that he uses to make the different sounds, but it only makes, like, 4 notes.
Yeah, and then he plays
It's
like a
got, like,
song, and then they're
1,000
like,
nubbins, but it
"Uh?"
plays 4 notes.
Yeah, and he was like,
"Huh?
Yeah." Like, after he's
Huh?"
done, they were like, "Cool." And you just see Ezra, he's like, "That was beautiful. Anyways."
So, anyway, I'm still dying over here.
Right. So pretty much what happens, he was like, "Hey, look, what do you want in exchange for some medicine? Like, I really need it." And they were like, "We'll make you a deal." And they bring forth a big case, and they set the case in front of him, and they were like, "This is our offer." And he was like, and he opens the case, and there are I don't know, roughly 10 to 15 of those gems,
Mhm,
the Orlax or whatever,
mhm.
that he's looking to get. And he was like, I don't understand. And they're like, for the girl. So essentially, what they explain is that they want to trade Ezra these gems for C. Because what we learn is that the female of their group has passed away, and they're looking for someone else to basically breed,
Not okay.
essentially. Not okay. But this
Not
is
okay.
again, one of those moments, and I think this is another one of those, like, you could easily misinterpret Ezra's like Ezra doing this to basically be like, um uh cool, I just want the money,
Mhm.
or like, oh, he actually has a heart of gold. But that's not really the case. Again, this is his moment of like, sure, this is great, but without her, like, I literally can't survive. So like,
Mhm.
I like, this money is irrelevant because survival is number one. And so she runs, and the boy chases after her, but then we hear a scuffle in the tent, so the boy runs back to the tent, and she bounces out, and is like, nope, see ya. So she starts heading off to where the mercs are, I guess, essentially. And at this point, of course, she stumbles across the tent, and Ezra calls her in and was like, "Get in here." And he's like, "Look, it's gotten too bad. Like, this is it. Like, either you cut off my arm or I die." And he's
Yeah.
like, "And you still need me."
So, this is where we get the chance to, like, she has this tiny little, like, motorized saw blade that they normally use for, carving the flesh off of the clams, essentially, to get at the gemstone. And he's like, it's got 5 settings, 2 for flesh, 4 for bone. I'm like, you either just named 2 of the settings or you're telling us that there's actually 6. It's very confusing. I know.
Right.
And he's like, he, like, puts on a tourniquet, shoots himself up with some painkillers, like, kind of slaps his arms, and, like, you can see it's like limp, and, like, there's no feeling. And he's like, all right, dude. She's like, is this gonna hurt? He's like, I don't know. No, I don't know. Just do
Maybe.
it. And she starts cutting through, and, like, she gets to the flesh and kind of, like, scrapes the bone. She's like, oh, that's bone. He's like, 4 for bone. She and cuts through, and the whole time this is where he says, like, you're awfully calm for this. And that's where she gives us her backstory of doing this gross, like, bloody work since she was a kid. And so she's just desensitized to it. She's like, this is nothing. Like, I feel like you have to have done some pretty bad shit to be desensitized to cutting off a man's arm.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even like she's not even like she asks him, "Are you sure?" in the way that like a doctor would to a patient when they're like, yes, no, this is, I'm ready for this. Like he's like, she is confident in doing the act. She is
Hmm.
just, still looking for that assurance of him to being like, are you sure this is what you want? And then she's like, okay, flashlight goes in the mouth, saw goes, and she's like, "Rah," and just starts going at it. Like there's no trepidation whatsoever
It's
for
really,
her
I mean,
doing this.
fantastic acting by Sophie Thatcher. Just like so calm, so focused, and like conveying this like 100% confidence in what she's doing, to like to the surprise and dismay of the adult in the room.
Yeah. And so she lobs off his arm, and
Yeah.
they have this like magic foam that they put in it that basically I guess would be like the cauterization, or something to that effect, to kind of stop the bleeding and
Yeah.
initiate healing and basically seal it up. And off she goes. Ezra makes a really messed up comment. Like it kind of, I was very squeamish during this moment, surprisingly. And so content warning, they do actually show the cutting of the blood and stuff like that, but it's only for a brief second. You don't see the full arm flop off, you don't see the arm after the fact or
Mhm.
anything like that, but you do see the flesh being ripped away.
Yeah.
But he says, like, goodbye to my primary weapon, my best friend. We've been together my whole life. And it was just, it was a very weird send off, but at the same time, like like, I don't know, it got me. Like losing a limb gets me. That's the one that I was like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh, oof. I couldn't imagine. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
messed up.
But I just love like obviously part of it's going to be the drugs that he shot himself up with, but part of it's just his character.
It
How
is.
like he like he's reacting the whole time, but you can't tell if it's pain or if it's just like the realization that like this is happening and like he can feel it, but it doesn't hurt, and he's just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god,
Oh, oh
like,
shit. Oh
are,
shit. Oh
are
shit.
you okay? Does it hurt? He's like, I don't know.
Oh, it's wild. So now that everything, the arm is off, he's sealed up, off they go, and they do end up meeting up with the mercs.
Hmm.
And this is where we get our moment of like, I felt like the whole merc moment was rushed a little bit. But I do understand its purpose. So we meet up with a group. There's a couple of things about them. So like one of them, is like she cranks up music to like torture them in a way, basically.
Did you catch who that was?
No.
That was Sheila Vand, the girl from A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
No shit.
She
Oh
like
shit.
she has a speaking role, like she's speaking in some alien language, so like it's like hard to tell that it's her, and you don't really see her face, but that was Sheila Vand.
Damn. Well, good
Yeah,
for her, dude. She was phenomenal in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. That's great.
yeah,
I did not notice that's who it was. I saw the name and I was like, I recognize the name, but I don't exactly like, I couldn't, it didn't jump ahead of me. Wild. Yeah.
yeah. She was one of the few people from the cast that I recognized when I looked them up. And then of course the leader of the Mercs, Mikan, is Amwin Glover, who what else? Oh, he was in The Wire and 12 Years a Slave,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Treme,
um,
the
yeah,
Deuce. Yeah.
yeah. So he's been in a bunch of stuff too, but again, you don't really get a chance to see his face too well because it's in the suit the entire time, and that's a really interesting way to approach too, because you don't get the full effect of everyone's face acting in this. It's
Yeah.
really a lot of like body language and just like the tilt of their head and stuff like that. Uh, C and Ezra have these big bubble helmets on, so you can see more of their faces and you see their interactions, stuff like that. But everyone else, unless they have their helmet off, their face is essentially covered, and that really limits what you can get out of the actor with tone of voice and body language. And again, really, really clever tactic.
It was, and the other thing too that I think is really interesting is it also almost served to be as like a class separation,
Mm,
because it made me feel like the people with the bubble helmets maybe had older technology. You know, we see her
okay.
with her older style headphones, you know, more beat up suits, but then we see these mercs and they've got very slim, militaristic looking headsets that serve like a very specific purpose. Their
Hmm.
suits were a little more form fitting and slim. They were a little more like uh you know, in a specific fashion, like they were probably all from the same line of clothing and probably fairly new, whereas theirs very much looked like, you know, they looked like a Carhartt jumpsuit, you know, whereas these
Hmm.
guys had something a little more you know, maybe high end or fashion forward. And I think that was also an interesting way to show
Yeah.
the difference between the two characters, you know,
Yeah.
which I thought was very
Well,
cool.
and even like Ezra and number two, like their suits looked a bit more worn down and old, indicating that maybe they've been stuck here for a while and just like scavenging. Even Ezra, like his air filter is like completely shot, so whenever he's with someone else, he has to like couple up and utilize their air filter through a hose.
Yeah.
So you get these like stages where like C and Damon's suits are a little bit newer looking, a little bit like less broken in, so to speak, but still that that like you said, that kind of older, more like civilian tech.
Yeah.
And then the more militarized, streamlined ones for the mercenaries.
Yeah, very cool. So the mercenaries, you know, we're at the point we see the guy in the cube that they're there to drop off, and they're like, okay, start digging. And you know, first Ezra's like, hey, so, and he pretends to be Damon, obviously, and he was like, hey, so here's the deal, though, like we'll
Hmm.
do this for you, but as an extra fee, you need to get us off of here. Like we our ship is dead and we have no way of going back. And they were like, no, like we can't do that, and we're not going to do that. And he's like, well, you need to. And so eventually they work out a deal where they can do that. You know, see quick thinking is like, oh, I've seen my dad do this, this, and this. And their tech person is like, oh, yeah, we could totally do that. And he was
Hmm.
like, great. Okay, now that we have an accord, let's do this. So off they go to start mining the clams. And now Ezra, with only one arm, starts mining, you know, starts doing the mining. And he messes up the first three. And it's, you know, it's a big deal. And of course the mercs are like, what are you doing, blah blah blah. And so one of them, you know, comes up and is like, hey, you know, what are you doing? And Ezra slams his face into the acid, basically burning through his suit and eventually to his face. You know, there becomes this big ordeal. Ezra and the girl, you know, they bounce out, but they're down, basically down to the last merc, after the cube guy gets out and he starts killing them. And Ezra ends up running into Sheila Vand, I believe, to Inuman.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
just as he's about to get her, she stabs him, and then he, you know, stabs her in the throat a bunch of times with the same tool that used to cut off his arm. And you know, this is it. So he's dying, and only C is left. And you know, he says to her like, hey, you got to go get on this ship, like go, you know,
Hmm.
take the jewels you have now. And like he's like, go, like this is it, this is your moment, leave me here. So again, it's that like moment of like, I guess this is really his own moment of truth. But I think it, you know, it just comes down to like he knows that this is it, he's done for. So I guess this is his redeeming act.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
know, like he killed her dad like 3 hours ago, so there's also like that.
It's, I feel like this very much has that like frontier law sort of feel to it, where like
Yeah,
you move on from things real fast because it's survival, and if
yeah,
someone wrongs you but then helps you, you can at least have an uneasy truce, if not an actual friendship. And she does go back to the Mercs camp and like grabs some medical supplies, and she douses him with the medicine to clear the wound, and she uses the foam to seal up his suit and like helps drag him to the escape pod. And that's that's the last we see, is them kind of collapsed into the escape pod with the freighter ship in the viewport,
yeah.
whatever it's called. I mean, it's not a windshield.
It's not a windshield. There's no wind in space, so it's not a windshield.
There's solar winds, but that doesn't count.
It doesn't count. but yeah, so that and then thus ends our movie. You know, we're left to wonder basically what they're doing after the fact. So should you watch this movie? Totally.
Yeah.
There's no reason to not watch this movie, especially if you're a fan of sci-fi and if you're more of a fan of story-driven sci-fi, much like the film Sunlight or other films like that. Like if you're like, I like sci-fi, but I don't want, I don't want Starship Troopers or I don't want
How dare you?
laser beams and aliens and stuff like that. Like I want to be in the world, but I don't want to feel like I'm overwhelmed with special effects. Prospect is the film for you.
Yeah, I mean this felt as much like an art film as a sci-fi story.
Totally.
And again, it's a story that could have taken place anywhere and felt realistic. The setting didn't really matter so much as the way that the characters react to their circumstances. And I think the acting in this movie is solid, and the story, the writing is fantastic. And yeah, I mean, this is absolutely a thumbs up. Watch this from me.
Cool. So that being said, thank you guys for listening to this episode or watching if you're on YouTube. We super appreciate it. Of course, if you are on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and share. But yeah, so Caleb, I actually don't even know what is the next movie we're going to talk about. What is the first up on our requests?
Well, that's a great question.
I thought so. That's why I asked it.
We are going to be watching. Change the calendar. We will be watching Hard Ticket to Hawaii, as requested by Julian.
Hey, all right. Hard Ticket to Hawaii. I'm down. This sounds it sounds amazing.
And you'll be able to find that on TBTV. At least we hope that it'll still be there by the time we go to watch it.
Just praying for 1 week.
Yep.
Cool. So all right, thanks a lot for joining us, everyone, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.